you guys are going to put these in your backpack. We're going to teach you about it.
All right, so look, fentanyl is a real thing. If you guys are exposed to fentanyl, because there can be something that has fentanyl on it, and if you touch it, you will immediately be exposed to it.
I'm going to come straight out the gate and say that this drug does not work that way. No hate to this family. I saw their video because my mutual stitched it, and I really appreciate that they want to educate their kids and have frank conversations about substance use with them. I do find it concerning that someone who says that they are a nurse in their profile would believe a Copaganda conspiracy theory that you can overdose on entanol simply by touching it, because you can't. I have made 3 videos recently in my Damsels in Distress playlist debunking this conspiracy theory about transdermal overdose from touching a laced dollar bill, a laced note, the gas station pump handle. This video, and this video.
This is from UC Davis. It is a common misconception that entanol can be absorbed through the skin, but it is not true for casual exposure. You cannot overdose from it by touching a doorknob or a dollar bill. This is not the pathway through which that drug works. Shocked to hear that this urban legend originates with the cops. It's pure Copaganda. One of the most famous cases is Officer Courtney Bannock. She faked passing out, said she was choking and couldn't breathe because she touched some powder that she believed was Tango and Cash. This is such a widespread moral panic that it's actually been studied. This was a really fascinating journal article. Police reports of accidental entanol overdose in the field, correcting a culture-bound syndrome that harms us all.
So I highly recommend going and watching those 3 videos. I think it's super important to educate our kids about substance use, to talk to them about the dangers, the risks, to make sure that we are creating a judgment-free zone where kids feel safe talking about these issues. But we need to make sure that we're sharing accurate information and not right-wing conspiracy theories and propaganda, and that we make sure that we're providing sufficient training. Narcan is a medication that has potential interactions and side effects, some of which can be serious. I mean, maybe this wasn't a complete training that they did with their kids, but there's a lot more to it than what they talked about in that video, especially when it comes to rolling someone on their side, contacting EMS, whether it's even appropriate for children to bear that burden rather than finding a safe adult. But considering this video starts with misinformation, I think there's a lot of room here for improvement in the way we talk to our kids about opioids, about Narcan, and perhaps consider going as a family to get trained from reliable community organizations on how to administer safely. Hey, Foolishly Polyam, I saw your reply video to my comment, and I'm sorry that I didn't get to respond earlier, but I'm doing so now. You made a video about teaching your kids how to use Narcan. And in that video, your husband, who's a nurse, made a comment about your kids may come in contact with Fent and thus may need to use Narcan. And I made a response saying that that's not accurate. You cannot overdose on Fent just by touching it. And I appreciate you taking the time to make a response video to my comment, but I wish you had taken the time to correct all of the people in the comments on your video who are falsely claiming that you can touch Fent and OD, who are spreading Copaganda. In fact, many of them say that they have heard directly from cops or have watched YouTube videos of cops ODing, which is false. I have a video pinned at the top of my TikTok debunking that claim. But instead, you chose to say that I was bullying you. Correcting misinformation is not bullying. And I'm doubly concerned because in the comments on this video, a woman said, you can OD on Fent when it's in the air around you. And you replied, right, exclamation point. Except that again is not true. From the American College of Medical Toxicology, which has a lot of good information dispelling the false notions around Fent, Entanol doesn't spontaneously go up into the air or volatilize easily. Even if powder gets blown into the air, it quickly settles down. I go on to say this is not something folks should be concerned about. And believing these myths harms actual victims of overdose because it makes us afraid to go give them aid. If we believe the air around them may contain Fent powder or that by touching them we could OD ourselves. Your husband in your video seemed a little defensive, and I understand that. He said he was worried about your kids touching Fent and then maybe touching their nose or their eye, and that might necessitate using Narcan. I couldn't find a single case in the literature of casual contact with Fent and then later touching the mouth or the eye or the nose that resulted in an overdose. So if he has some literature, I would love to see it. Again, I just want to reiterate here, this is from the Oregon Health Authority. Fent powder does not easily become airborne, and the powder from the drug does not linger in the air. In order to be at risk from an OD, there would have to be massive quantities of this substance suspended in the air for a prolonged period of time. Such an event is highly unlikely. Likewise, ODing or even getting high from secondhand Fent smoke is not an issue. I think it's super important that we share accurate information with our children and with the public. Again, I think it's great to be having these conversations with our children. Frank, judgment-free convos about substance use. What to do if our kids or their friends get in a difficult situation. That's all really important and really good. But allowing folks in your comments to believe Copaganda, continuing to exaggerate the risks of fentanyl overdose, and ramp up paranoia around this issue harms the most vulnerable members of our community. It harms the folks who actually are substance users. Folks who are likely to experience an overdose from intentional usage of Fent or some other substance laced with it. Because it makes the general public and first responders unnecessarily fearful of rendering aid. It makes us afraid to touch victims or even be near them, delaying or preventing care, the same life-saving care you are talking about in your original video. Believing false information around Fent risks lives, the lives of the most vulnerable and misunderstood members of our community. That's why I'm so passionate about talking about this issue and addressing it correctly. This should come as a surprise to nobody, but the cops don't know what the hell they're talking about. Especially when it comes to this topic, overdosing on entanol. I mean, this commenter says she knows you can overdose just from touching it because her husband is a police officer and he can attest to that fact. Except that you can't. You can't overdose on Fent just by touching it. This is the part of the video where I bring receipts and talk about how this is pure Copaganda. It's very common for cops and other first responders to spread the myth that you can overdose on entanol by touching it. Nearly all leaders and officers interviewed in this study believed that dermal exposure to fentanyl was deadly and expressed fear about such exposure on the scene. Officers had a lack of education around Fent exposure and faulty or dubious sources of information about it. I talked about this study in another video extensively, but I found this really interesting. They call this a culture-bound syndrome, the false belief by police that is spread throughout society that you can accidentally overdose on Fent by touching it or by interacting with someone who has OD'd on it. Those videos you see of cops passing out when they come in contact with what they believe is Fent are experiencing what is known as a false overdose. This is the nocebo effect or a panic attack. It's a somatic event, but it gets reported all over social media as actual overdoses, and cops continue to perpetuate the myth. Again, this is an extremely well-studied phenomenon. There are videos of cops all over the country having anxiety attacks and thinking they overdosed on Fent. But it is believed that that trend started in New Jersey. It's basically a moral panic amongst police where they believe this myth that it is just touching any amount of fentanyl that can cause severe illness or injury or even death, when that is absolutely not true. This panic began when an officer said he nearly died an hour after brushing some white powder off his shirt at a traffic stop. He said his body was shutting down and that he needed 4 doses of naloxone to be revived. He then said, "This stuff is very dangerous. It takes the slightest amount, just one little granule. If it gets airborne, it could kill you." All of that is patently false. But cops are perceived as authority figures even though they have very little training and zero medical expertise. And so these myths get believed and perpetuated, and they spread like wildfire. Again, there's a lot of research out there on this phenomenon. It has been studied extensively, including this article. Fent panic goes viral, the spread of misinformation about overdose risk from casual contact with Fent in mainstream and social media. This Copaganda myth has appeared in more than 551 news articles spanning 48 states. Misinformation media reports received approximately 450,000 Facebook shares, reaching nearly 70 million users. Were amplified by erroneous government statements, misinformation, basically small town cops sharing this myth, police departments continuing to spread this lie. Millions and millions of people have seen this myth and now believe it. It is a culture-bound syndrome, a moral panic. This is from an NPR piece. They note that 0 of the cases in which officers felt they had been poisoned by Fent or overdosed after encountering the street drug, none of those cases were confirmed by toxicology reports. However, those symptoms do match up with panic attacks or somatic symptoms. Symptoms of lightheadedness, palpitation, and nausea that cops tend to experience. There are no toxicology reports showing any of these cops actually overdosed or even had Fent in their system from these incidents. So, sweetheart, I hate to say it, but your husband has been hoodwinked by a common myth that police officers buy into and spread. It is either intentional Copaganda or unintentional. Either way, it's patently false. Hey Shelby, you said, sweetie, yes you can. A cop got ill very, very fast from touching it, so be quiet. Whole long video about this, which I'll probably have pinned at the top of my page by now. I hate to tell you, but you are one of the potentially 70 million people who have been hoodwinked by fake stories of cops overdosing from touching fentanyl. Health-related misinformation about cops overdosing on fentanyl continues to proliferate online, hampering responses to this public health crisis. More than 450,000 shares on Facebook of videos and news stories have spread the myth that cops are overdosing from touching fentanyl. Officer Courtney Bannock of Florida is the classic case. We've all seen her flopping around on the ground, believing that she OD'd, but she actually was having a panic attack. NPR couldn't find a single case of a police officer who reported being poisoned by Fent that could be backed up by toxicology reports. I'll keep bringing receipts. You're watching cops having panic attacks. Who the fuck are you? You absolutely can OD on fentanyl just by touching it. Please delete this. You risk killing an innocent with your ignorance. Who am I? Who the fuck am I? I'm a plant expert, but I'm also somebody who can read, who looks at the data instead of believing cops and instead of buying into conspiracy theories. I'm someone who brings the receipts when I say that you cannot overdose by touching Fent. Oh, look, the American College of Medical Toxicology. You can't overdose on entanolfe just by touching it. Here's what the experts say. Fent as a dry powder is not going to cross through your skin. It's the same reason you can touch sugar without your blood sugar going up. If you get some powder on you, just wash it off or brush it off. After that, I wouldn't worry about it at all. As for the patches, if you covered both your palms in patches, it would still take 15 minutes to get a standard medical dose. Believing this myth hurts overdose victims and makes us hesitant to want to help them because we fear being contaminated. I find it interesting that in a conversation where I'm citing credible sources such as the CDC, the Department of Justice, Johns Hopkins, the Mayo Clinic, my local public health authority, local addiction medicine, and public health experts, discussing peer-reviewed journal articles and peer-reviewed data, women on the other side of that argument who choose to use Copaganda YouTube videos and hysterical white mom, I was almost abducted Facebook posts as their evidence, leave comments like this one. Good for you. That's your resource of choice. Like, the confirmation bias is astounding. When presented with good facts, credible sources that counter the conspiracy theories that fellow white women are so desperate to believe in. They cannot handle having their worldview and their perception of self shaken. It's easier for them to double down on their nonsense and reject the truth. Lexi here says that she's a police officer. She brags about believing the conspiracy theory that cops can overdose on fentanyl by just touching it. But then she goes on to describe the people she has sworn to protect and serve as the shittiest people society has to offer, and also brags about carrying her firearm. It's startling to think about how poorly educated police officers are in America. A few weeks of police academy, no college degree required, no science, no criminal justice, no mathematics. No communications, no conflict resolution and de-escalation, no psychology, no anti-racism, anti-bias training, no EMT certification, and yet we put these people in authority over us, give them deadly weapons when they have a woefully inadequate understanding of the law, our rights as citizens, and are actively trained to lie to us, the people they are sworn to serve and protect. Go on YouTube and watch California deputy suffers fentanyl overdose after exposure to substance on patrol. Oh, sweetheart, didn't your mama tell you that not everything you see on YouTube is real? That video you're referencing is a cop either faking or having a panic attack. And the New York Times debunked it way back in 2021. But the video continues to circulate. Hundreds of thousands of people have seen this cop and others fake fentanyl overdoses, or have a panic attack and be too embarrassed to admit that's what it was. However, a comprehensive toxicology study of all of those cops who claimed to have OD'd by touching Fent showed that 0 of them had entanolfe in their systems. They did have symptoms like being lightheaded and felt like they couldn't breathe, racing heart, and other symptoms of anxiety, or a psychosomatic event, like the nocebo effect. As I have thoroughly covered in multiple videos, you cannot OD by touching Fent. If you could, users would simply handle it rather than smoking or injecting, and every nurse in America would have OD'd by now.
This is for girls, especially in the Fort Lauderdale, Florida area. So about 4 hours ago, I went to the store, I came back out to my car, and there was a note under my car door handle.
Thank you to all the folks who tagged me in yet another trafficking conspiracy theory video. I just spent the last couple of hours going down a rabbit hole of DEA statistics and peer-reviewed transdermal toxicology studies. And I'm super excited to share it with y'all and debunk this video.
I've seen TikToks before, and I was like, I know that you're not supposed to touch a note or anything left on your car because it could be a trafficking.
So this young woman is claiming that she came out to her car, found a note tucked under the door handle, and she was afraid of touching it because she'd seen TikToks warning her that this might be a sign that she was going to be trafficked. Once again, demonstrating how effectively social media spreads moral panic. Here's the note. Pause if you want to zoom in and read it. I shamelessly called this number, and it is a Fort Lauderdale number, but it says it's disconnected. I don't mean to be overly suspicious, but I don't know whether someone named Steven actually left this note or if this whole story is fabricated. So first off, let's make it clear, human trafficking does not happen via stranger abduction in public places. And it definitely does not happen like this. She claims she only touched the note briefly, through her shirt sleeve, and through a napkin. But she did touch the door handle and immediately had a reaction.
In 2 minutes, my hand started tingling and I started feeling lightheaded. And I was like, no way. Like, there was seriously something on that.
I mean, girlfriend, no way is right. No way. So her belief that briefly touching the door handle that had this note on it caused her to get a tingly feeling in her arm and become lightheaded, enough to go to the urgent care. She doesn't say what substance she thinks she encountered.
Go to urgent care. So I did, and they actually helped me call 911.
And she conveniently glosses over what the physicians at the urgent care had to say. But that's okay, because I did a little digging. Because this is a common conspiracy theory on TikTok. The traffickers are going to leave something that's either laced with fentanyl or GHB roofies. You're going to touch it while trying to get into your car. You're going to rapidly absorb that substance through your skin, become incapacitated in a public parking lot. And then traffickers are going to snatch you and sex traffic you. Let's take fentanyl first. You're not going to get high, much less get a toxic dose from handling fentanyl. Some helpful info from UC Davis. It is a common misconception that fentanyl can be absorbed through the skin, but it's not true for casual exposure. You cannot overdose on fentanyl by touching a doorknob or a dollar bill. The one case is with a prescribed fentanyl skin patch. Even then, it takes hours of exposure. So then I looked up GHB, which has to cross into the bloodstream via the digestive system, aka taken orally. I did find one 2019 BuzzFeed article claiming that it can be toxic when used as a suppository. Again, digestive system to bloodstream, not transdermally. By the way, you have to ingest between 1 to 2 teaspoons of GHB to have an effect. That's about 1 to 5 grams. I appreciated this explanation from a recovery center about all the factors that impact absorption through the skin. Your palms are one of the least effective places for transdermal absorption due to skin thickness. So where does this particular moral panic come from? Would you be shocked to find out that this false information is perpetuated by the cops? Hey, look, this also originates in Florida. Officer Courtney Bannock put on a very dramatic show of losing consciousness after she believed she briefly touched fentanyl. Other claims by cops, this one in San Diego, were vigorously discredited by physicians. You can't just touch fentanyl and overdose. And yet this fakery got folded into the moral panic around trafficking.
Over 4 hours later, my arm is still like very tingly from my shoulder all the way down my arm, like to my fingertips. Like, it's just still completely tingly. And I feel okay, but I'm just a little freaked out. You hear about this stuff happening all the time.
But Olivia claims that even 4 hours later, she's still having symptoms. Her arm still feels numb and tingly. So what's going on here? This is where I had a good time nerding out in the literature. And I learned a new term, a culture-bound syndrome. So what is this cop-originated culture-bound syndrome? Alleged overdoses have been cited as examples of the nocebo effect, where inaccurate beliefs about a drug generate negative somatic effects upon exposure. The false belief that one has received a substantial dose can produce very real and distressing symptoms. Obviously, I'm not a medical professional, but it's just not physically possible for Olivia to have these symptoms based on briefly touching her door handle where a piece of paper once sat. The nocebo effect is when a patient's negative expectations elicit symptoms, negative symptoms. This moral panic around human trafficking is a fascinating psychological phenomenon, clearly eliciting somatic or somatoform symptoms in folks who buy into it when there is no real danger at all. Trafficking does not happen this way. This is a paranoid conspiracy theory. Trafficking happens to young, vulnerable people via grooming by someone that they know, not protected white women being kidnapped out of public parking lots through laced notes on their door handle. But you can see the real detrimental effects of women who buy into this nonsense.
So I just wanted to say, like, be careful, because that was with me touching the note for 1 to 2 seconds maybe. And I can't imagine if there was a girl, that like didn't know that this happened and they took it out.
Women, we don't have to be held in the grip of this kind of fear and anxiety. We don't have to be held captive by our paranoid delusions that can clearly manifest real physical symptoms, waste our resources, our energy, and rob us of our peace. When we learn how trafficking happens, who the potential victims are, we don't have to keep getting hoodwinked by conspiracy theories that originate in the alt-right, that keep us in a constant state of fear, where we are more easily controlled, and where we're unnecessarily fearful of our community. Okay, by now everybody's seen that video of that young woman in Florida who claims that she handled a laced note that was left on her car door handle. This video right here. And I made a 5.5-minute reply video to it yesterday, which is currently pinned at the top of my TikTok, and you can go watch it. That video has been pretty suppressed, I think because I used this word, end tunnel fae, explicitly several times in that video. This comment was left on the original creator's video, and it was repeated many times. Folks asked what substance could you touch for 1 to 2 seconds that would create hours worth of tingling up your arm and lightheadedness, as that creator claimed happened to her. And many comments said, King Ivory, Goodfellas, He-Man, Tango and Cash, whatever you want to call it, could have legitimately caused this reaction. Again, she claims that there was a note on her door handle. She didn't touch it directly with her skin. She touched it through her shirt and then through a napkin, and then touched the door handle of her car itself. She believes this note was proof that someone was trying to incapacitate her in order to sex traffic her. This is a common moral panic, a common conspiracy theory on social media. And I would like to quickly debunk this claim that Tango and Cash can do this to you. This is from UC Davis. It is a common misconception that end tunnel fae can be absorbed through the skin, but it is not true for casual exposure. You cannot overdose from it by touching a doorknob or a dollar bill. This is not the pathway through which that drug works, but it's clearly a commonly held erroneous belief. You need only look at that video and look at all the comments like this one. So where does it come from? Would you be shocked to hear that this urban legend originates with the cops? It's pure Copaganda. One of the most famous cases is Officer Courtney Bannock. She faked passing out, said she was choking and couldn't breathe because she touched some powder that she believed was Tango and Cash. There have been multiple instances of cops flopping like this, more dramatically than soccer players, pretending that they pass out and have exposure. They've been overdosed by briefly touching this substance. And as you can see here, these claims have been roundly rejected by physicians. These have been universally debunked, but cops still keep making these false claims. This is such a widespread moral panic that it's actually been studied. This was a really fascinating journal article. Police reports of accidental end tunnel fae overdose in the field, correcting a culture-bound syndrome that harms us all. This article is about how harmful it is for cops to falsely claim that they are overdosing by briefly coming into physical contact with Tango and Cash or with people who are using it. The article goes on to explain that this fakery by cops presents serious obstacles to addressing the overdose crisis. It falsely transforms overdose emergencies, which require rapid response to prevent death in the user, into perceived life and death situations for first responders. It perpetuates the stigma that people who use illicit opioids are inherently dangerous to encounter and that their bodies and belongings are poisonous. It perpetuates the falsehood that officers could die from contact with a substance they routinely encounter in the field. This is profoundly stressful to officers as well as users. Alleged overdoses have been cited as examples of the nocebo effect, where inaccurate beliefs about a drug generate negative somatic effects upon exposure. The false belief that one has received a substantial dose can produce very real and distressing symptoms: panic, hyperventilation, vertigo, racing heart, lightheadedness, tingling arms. These are often misrecognized as evidence of this drug's known effects. Again, what we have here is the nocebo effect. Patient has negative expectations and they anticipate negative side effects from a medication, in this case, Tango and Cash. So they believe that they experience the side effects of that medication. The nocebo effect is said to occur in someone who falls ill owing to the erroneous belief that they were exposed to a physical phenomenon they believe is harmful, such as this instance here. So I hope that helps set the record straight. I hope the OP takes down her video, because all she's doing is perpetuating a harmful conspiracy. She did in her original comment degrading some poor lady bringing caution and awareness. Hey, La Dolce Vita, you've made a number of false claims, and I'd like to take a second and counter each and every one of them. So first off, I'm discussing facts around Fent overdose, debunking myths around this issue. In fact, I have a whole playlist and you should go watch every video. But your comment here is referencing a video where a nurse and his wife are muddling, if not misrepresenting, the risks of Fent overdose. You claim I am degrading her, so let's look at what my comment was. This is false. You cannot OD on entanol by touching it. Please learn how this drug works before making videos and handing out Narcan with misinformation. What was degrading there? What was degrading about my comment? I mean, I did notice that you left half a dozen comments in which you called me a Karen because you don't like that I am disputing your false claims and her muddled ones with facts. This is precisely what I am talking about when I say that we need to stop infantilizing other women, painting us as damsels in distress, by falsely representing factual critique, disagreement, debate, correction as degrading, or as that woman did in her video, she said I was bullying her with that comment. We as women are better than this. We are stronger than this. It does all of us a disservice to manufacture victimhood when someone disagrees with us. It's embarrassing for all of us as women to see other women play this game because we all can see through it. As to your false claims that you can OD from Fent just by touching it, or your claim that Fent can become airborne and you can OD that way, I have resoundly debunked both of those false, harmful claims you and others are making in this playlist down here, using peer-reviewed research, credible, authoritative sources. I get that it doesn't feel good to be wrong. It doesn't feel good to be corrected. And we have so little distress tolerance in this country that instead of sitting with our discomfort and processing the fact that we were misinformed and maybe we're spreading misinformation, it's easier to play victim, to be hyperbolic and throw out false accusations that you were bullied or degraded, when in reality you just got fact-checked.